other countries, they really value us and they pay you, you know, $100,000. My last year teaching, there was young black man, first year teaching. I learned he's a full-time police officer. He has 4 kids. So he was teaching full-time during the day and then going to be a police officer overnight. That's like 2 of the hardest jobs that there are like in this country. And you're doing them both like in a 24-hour span. And it's like, that's just not sustainable.
That was the voice of Jason Biehl, this week's guest. Jason is a history teacher, anti-racist educator, organizer, and writer. He's an educational consultant that furthers racial equity within organizations and schools. As a white man who wants to interrogate whiteness, he's a perfect person to talk to about the upcoming presidency. We get a little carried away at the start, but eventually we share our teacher masks, and then you're going to learn 3 things. 1, why embracing discomfort is vital to the education of our students and effectiveness of teachers. 2, how education is a practice of freedom and how Project 2025 will affect your life as a teacher. 3, we'll be sharing some acts of kindness, belonging, and activism we're seeing from students that can provide teachers with hope in these difficult times. So let's take out your notes and let's start the show. As a male educator at your school site, it can get lonely. Only 23% of K-12 educators in America are male. And just think about what this gender gap means for your male students. They experience disproportionate levels of discipline. This is a show for male educators who want to feel more understood by their community and want to create emotionally safe classrooms and schools for the next generation of male students. Welcome to Unmasking with Male Educators. What I have also been trying to figure out in this current, well, what's about to come, like the day of the election, the next day I was at a retreat, and I was like, if I came all the way out here to this retreat, to this conference, to like deal with some healing, and I like take this new hurt that's causing new, and I don't like deal with the old stuff, I'm coming to this next season ready and ability to say, okay, what is this going to mean for people who I care about? What's it going to mean for people who I love? What's it going to mean for this education system that I've been working really hard to try and improve? And now knowing that there's a narrative out there, regardless of what they do, eventually the narrative says we're going to break it all apart. And I think that it's already broken. So to break it more is like, it's like, oh, we're going to make it better by breaking it apart. But then we're going to just, I think as a person who loves education, is passionate about education, I've been in a deep worry, right? A deep worry. And not only for education and service, not just, oh, I have a place to go learn the things that we're letting kids learn. The amount of states have already said we don't want them to learn about anything that's going to make them potentially feel uncomfortable. To then turn that over to the education over to those people who say, we should not let you read anything, experience anything that's going to make you feel like there's some empathy, some sympathy, some feelings of awe, of hurt, that people were hurt for the cause of whatever cause people want to name it behind. To say, I don't want you to feel that, is to then say, oh, you shouldn't feel empathy for those people. They deserved it. That's what they got, what they deserved.
And it's to enable it to happen again. Because we know that history happens in cycles. And so it's like, if you're hiring in Florida, the Prager University people, it's all for profit. And they're all just like whitewashing and packaging this history. Like you said, they've made white discomfort against the law. And it's like, I can speak to that actually in my journey, that white discomfort, that's actually like the single theme in my memoir that's like made me a better person, more human, more empathetic. And so they're outlawing that. And so in Oklahoma, the governor was like, because people are like, oh, you can't teach, how can we not teach Tulsa, the Tulsa race massacre and all that, right? And he's like, oh, you can. So he like relented. He was like, Republican governor. He's like, okay, you can teach about it. You just can't say that it had anything to do with race. Make that make sense, And so it's just like, yeah, it's frustrating. It's intentional. It's
what it also requires, and even to say that out loud and to really believe it is one thing, but to expect that the way that I'm to teach it is to say, oh, well, these people didn't like those people, and so they just killed them all, and that's just the way it is. Like it almost leaves you with a almost a worse kind of a potential outcome that they just randomly decided that I'm just going to massacre a whole community of people because I don't like with them, and I'm giving no like what? How are we trained? Like we got kids, like elementary kids are smart and they're ruthless.
Right.
So we're going to keep teaching these kids that, oh, you know what? We just didn't like them. So we just went and took them out. We didn't, well, what reason are we going to give? Well, we didn't like they were making money. We didn't like that they had prosperity. We didn't like that they were healthy. We didn't like that. Oh, we just didn't like them. And we decided that, you know what we should do? We should just go take them all out. I think what we're preparing ourselves to do is teach a new generation that guess what? You could call people stupid and dumb, no problem. You're powerful. You make them feel bad. You make them feel small. And we are acting like we expect these kids in the current way they're showing up in the world that they're not going to experience any harmful effects for this, you know?
And these are kids who've been trained to hide under their desks and with a school shooting drill, right? So it's like, and JD Vance calls this inevitable, right? It's like, man, like this doesn't happen anywhere else in the world like this, and the guns are inevitable. So it's just, yeah, it's wild, and I see now, and with our educators for racial justice, with myself, Zeb Kinder, Dana Rose, who's actually out in Oakland. We've done a collective. We want to work more. We do work with schools, but like more with admin to address like these instances of like hate and like racism when stuff happens. Like we don't want to be ambulance chaser. We don't want to be like reactionary. And like, swastikas were just like, put in a school, in Annapolis, and a 7-year-old kid was just hung in a bathroom in Maryland that he lived, but without reading it, I'm like, I bet, I know his rank, and I bet people, who his parents voted for, and all this other stuff. And it's like the school is Calvert County, Maryland, right? And someone's like, Maryland, and it's like, but there's a part of Maryland that I think is like the South, right? And the ways in which they handle these incidents are so they don't have the skill. I was going to say tone deaf, but I don't even know if that's probably ableist or not the right thing to say anymore. But they don't do any justice or care or protection for the kids and the families that experience stuff like that. I know that.
Well, and here in the Bay Area, we had a young man who died by suicide. He was being bullied by football players. He was on the JV team. His family was homeless. These kids knew that he lived at this shelter. They made fun of him every day. And basically, he was dealing with his own stuff that he was grappling with. And like his dad didn't want to be at a homeless shelter. His dad was trying to like make the ends meet, which often are hard to meet when ends end. And so this idea that, oh, we are not going to do the work. We're not going to do the proactive work. What I see a lot of times is that the reactive work. Oh, you know what? That happened. Let's figure out why. How did that happen? So we go into reactive mode as opposed to like not knowing that what we teach and what we train and what we let go, what we ignore are the things that will continue to show up. I think that my heart is concerned for
Yeah.
what statements that people are making out loud that they're going to do. And I'm even more sometimes feeling kind of devastated and worried about people who totally bought into some kind of pipe dream about how it was going to be made better without even counting the cost of what it's going to be made worse. And I'm optimistic, as I try and always be. I know that I'm on a mission to do this work, so I'm going to keep my eyes on the field and try and do my best to not get pulled into these other detours, because sometimes I'm just so frustrated and I'm so angry. But I have to be careful how I let that be seen, right, in the world that we live in, right? How do I let this anger and rage show up and I stay safe and I stay protected? Because we live in a world sometimes where I'm not really, I feel sometimes I have to tame it all. I have to like tamper it down, right? Because the worry of what somebody's going to say about, oh, you're just angry. You don't, like, what are you angry for? And you're just like, you must be missing the kind of world I live in.
Yeah, how do you not understand? Yeah, how can they not put themselves in your spot, your space, place?
Ooh wee, man, that was the intro. That was the
It
intro.
wasn't an
Welcome,
intro, right?
welcome to Talking with Teachers. Welcome to
Thank you
welcome
so
to
much.
Unmasking with Teachers. Like, welcome to the new chapter of this work. And I think that these conversations are so critical for me to have with other folks in the community who care about the world we're bringing up youth in, the world that we're still living in, and how do we make it better? Because, yeah, I'm trying to say, like, what do I say right here? Like, I'm concerned about the next 4 years of what's going to happen in the state of education, and I'm concerned to, like, not sit back and watch it this time. Like, so how to sit back and just, like, hope that they don't mess it up too bad. Hope that they don't do. And so now it's like, okay, Shanti, this is time. This is the time. And so thank you for being willing to be a part of this next chapter of the work.
100%. So honored to be here, and deeply concerned as well. But grateful to be back on the show. And yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot of organizing and activism and education and you name it that needs to happen in these moments. So I'm excited.
Will you just, for the sake of where we are right in this time, in 2024, the last time you were here was November of 2022, 2 years ago. The show was called Taking Off the Mask, and it was just men from all over the world coming together. But in this new chapter, we're talking about education and educators, but also people who are passionate about education. Would you just give an intro to who you are, the work that you're passionate about, what you're doing, and then we'll jump in. I mean, I think we've already jumped in, but I think this will let us, if we put it in a different order, we'll at least make sure we had a good intro from you, telling folks what you want them to know.
Sure. Yeah. Jason Biehl, he, him pronouns, born and raised in Washington, D.C., still live in D.C. And I am a social justice history teacher, at heart, and was teaching full time high school history last school year. I'm also an anti-racist, educator and facilitator, really active, particularly in the, white folks anti-racism lane, have been since 2016, got involved with Surge, showing up for racial justice in DC. And that led to me founding Change the Narrative, which names the need for white Americans to be involved in race and equity work. And that's led to more work with white men and healing work and education work. I organized a masculinity and whiteness reading group out of Surge in 2016, 2017. And we still meet monthly. I actually hosted the guys in the backyard last night. And that's become a real, like, vibrant healing space and a space of belonging and nurturing for white men, looking for, community in this work. So it's just a little bit.
Yeah. I love that idea of a space for belonging. And I mean, I think that's so important and valuable and needed, right? The place, where do we feel like love, connection, and belonging? Where are those places? And I think that I think so many people miss it. And so they look for it in all the, maybe what we call the wrong places. And then they find it. They find, oh, I got this connection. It may be fleeting. It may be limited. It may be just until this high drops off the cliff. And then, but I think that the idea of, it's so needed for each other. I'm on a men's team. Nice Tuesday. We meet on Tuesday nights. The idea that I get a chance to, like, go to a space where I don't have to have it all figured out. I'm trying to have it all figured out, but I don't. And I get to not pretend like I do, and I get to ask for help, and I get to be vulnerable. And I think having that space is so important. And so I'm glad you're making that space for you and for other men. And I think I wish more men had it. I think so many men don't have it. And so,
Yeah, 100%. And I think, someone was actually talking about with Ryan is that the far right, unfortunately, is creating some of that, right? And they have a way of kind of reaching and messaging towards boys and like making things seem cool. And some of the manosphere, the Joe Rogan, some of these folks that I don't even know their influence enough, but we need, in more social justice work, need to find ways to make this work sexy, I guess, or appealing, or fun. And it is. It's inspiring. There's art. There's music. Like, and I think too many young men, they don't see themselves in it. And I'll say, particularly with white men, because of our positionality, because of our privilege, I think too often, we feel like we're the villain. And I think social justice spaces make us feel like we're synonymous with white supremacy. And so I think there is actually like a reclaiming of our like humanity and our goodness, and also like our power, like used in the right ways, right? Not in ways to dominate and divide and hate and race and things like that. But we have a lot of power and value in this work.
Oh, Jason, here's what I'm excited about in this new season is that I don't know what to expect. I'm actually a little excited and a little nervous, but I think I think about education all the time. And so to be having these conversations, not only with, people like you and your community who are like standing up against power and who are willing to like put comfort and just going with the flow aside, it means a lot. And I think it means a lot for not only young people in our community who see it, who know that they can also stand up and, yeah, maybe uncomfortable. It may create some tension, but what are you to go to sleep at night feeling, right? And I think that I felt like I gave my best to make the world a better place. And I don't understand a thought process of somebody who says, you know what, other people don't matter. I don't. That's not how I live or have ever. So I don't even know what that looks. I mean, I know what it looks like on the outside, but I just can't. It's not a feeling I can get behind. To be like, doesn't matter what anybody else gets or how their life is. As long as I got mine, and I think that I'm thankful for you. So for being in this conversation.
Likewise. Thank you so much, Shanji.
So since we're going to go back to this mask, we're going to make a mask, and we made a mask. I would like us just to, as I think about our teacher persona, our educator, a person has an education, how does this mask look? And so, always the opportunity for you to decide who goes first, me or you. I would like you to decide who you want to go first in this this next chapter of mask.
I'm happy to go.
Okay, fantastic.
All right, so let me hold it up to the screen here. Once again, my artistic skills are leave a lot to be desired. But I put down, honest, straightforward. I'm a history teacher, high school history teacher, and I feel like I bring, the social justice, the truth, like kind of like you're gonna call it like you see it. Like I'm not a liar. Call me a lot of things, but I'm not a liar. Hopeful. I mean, I think that's something I try and embody both, in my life, with my partner, my fiance, and also in the classroom, because it's easy to get weighed down. Some of the history we get into gets, heavy. And so I think it's important to be hopeful and to be inspired and, to do my best to be inspiring, because I feel inspired by so many, educators and artists and freedom fighters. And then the bottom one is organized, and I think that's a tough one, because, you get so busy, you get so spread thin, but I really try and be thoughtful and like have a plan and have the minutes, and like, yeah, organization is like a huge teacher quality if you've got it, and so I think this is this is the front of my mask.
I think this season we asked people, would you be willing to share the back also? And then, and then I'll share. Yeah. Okay. We thought of it. I mean, someone help us think of it like to share them right notes, because sometimes we get into a narrative and then we lose the thread.
That makes sense. Okay. So I'll just say, and it said also like 3 qualities that you don't share. And I'm not sure that like all of these are qualities, but they're honest, or that, once again, the honesty that's there, they're part of my mask. So I put strong boundaries, like relationally. I think that actually is a quality. So I think like, I care deeply and I'm there for you. And then there's just also things as a teacher with the other adults, with youth, like just in general, like you need to have work life like boundaries. And I think just modeling of that, it's not something I understood as a young person, but that's important. And then this one's definitely applicable. I don't consider it a quality necessarily, but I said feeling angry and sad. And I think that's just as part of like men's work, is just really honest, and particularly in these times. And I actually had like a breakthrough. I was doing some somatic work with a coach about a month or so ago, and I just felt sad, and I tried to like intellectualize and push back. I was like Israel and Gaza and all that, and he was like, what happens if you just let yourself feel, 5% more sad, And I just sat there. I'm like, and I felt the tears come, right. And what's interesting is I stopped them because we were actually on a Zoom and it was actually being recorded, like this is. And so while I felt them come, and while I wanted, probably needed to cry, I wasn't ready there. I wasn't ready to be like recorded breaking down in tears with my somatic coach, right? But that says a lot, right? That you can't, to me, we have to be in integrity with our emotions and our full range of emotions.
Yeah.
And it's okay to be sad. It's okay to not be okay. So, and the last one, once again, not a quality necessarily, but as a reverse to the organized, is like distracted and scattered, right? And I'm just going to say, like, as a teacher and or just in general, like, these times have been really hard. Pandemic years. I mean, it's just, we have a lot on our plate. Mind's going a lot of ways, heart's going a lot of ways. And so I like try, and aim to be as present and caring and everything for students in every minute as you can be. And the reality is, like, other things come in the way and you get distracted and you get scattered and you're not. So presence is a gift and a quality, and like it's a lie to say you can be present and as observant. And that's the other thing, is like to really listen to young people and like be present and observant. And sometimes it's like I have classes where I have 30 some kids in the class, and it's just like, and you're not your best. And so there's a measure of perseverance, and there's a measure of kind of doing your best on days when you don't have your best. That's me.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. So many things resonated, and I'm gonna resist the temptation to like jump into where all the places that resonated until I share mine, because I think I felt a lot of that, and as a teacher, I just want to appreciate you, and I think here's where my teacher mask comes in. I think on the front, when you wrote organize on the front, I'm like, oh, that. Oh, let me. That's not happening here. This is a new design I'm working on still. Like, I wrote serious, funny, and loud. And probably loud should be first, then loud and serious, and then funny. Right? I think people don't see the funny too often because they get stuck in the loud and serious tone of my desire for them to have a better life. Right? I think I was part preacher, part teacher. Like I think one student said, "Are you a preacher?" And I'm like, "Why you ask me that?" My grandfather was a preacher. He's like, "Oh, I can see it. I'm like, "What are you talking about?" They're like, "Because you always giving some speech about something." You know what I'm saying? I'm like, "Well, if y'all did your homework regularly, I wouldn't have to speech about it, right? I would just be like, give you the check thing off and be done. But I can't like watch you failing yourself and say nothing, right?" So it was like that loud. I think in my end of the year surveys, our district did surveys, and students were always like, "He's so mean. He's always yelling." I'm like, yelling? I don't think I've ever yelled. I just have a loud voice, right?
Sure.
Like if I go 3 octaves higher, you'd be like, he's yelling, and I'm like, no, I don't be yelling at nobody. I don't even got time for yelling, like, right? But I think fussing and my loud voice always felt like it was that, right?
Sure.
So that's the front, like this idea of like wanting to just be able to laugh all the time. I try to like be the cool teacher my first year teaching, and I got taken advantage of. I was like, oh, you mean, once you don't listen to me, then you just don't listen to me? Like, is that happening for the rest of the year? And I realized, oh, the students who got me second semester, I said, sorry, your peers last semester has created a new Mr. Branch. So I apologize in advance because you in a new day today. You know what I'm saying? I learned I can't be the nice guy.
Right.
Y'all can't handle it. Y'all can't handle somebody trying to be nice and then getting back to work. It's like, oh, wait, now you don't want to let us do whatever we want to do? I never did. I just wanted to laugh with you for the first 2 or 3 minutes. And so, yeah, that was my front of mask.
That resonates, particularly the humor. I absolutely like try and be cool and all that, and it's connected in times and been run over in others.
I'm that teacher. I'm that teacher. This back is interesting because it came really connected to a lot of things you were sharing. So I'm gonna just here's the words. And I think when I think about qualities, I think we think about like qualities and characteristics, but I wrote trying to keep it all together. That's the back. Money challenges. That was
Yes.
a big part of the back. And spread thin. Spread thin. I think the one, the one I want to talk about is like trying to keep it all together, and maybe it connects to the money challenges as a teacher. Like, my goal is to come in and teach and not focus on all my stuff and like be focused on the students. But there was a season where like I left my engineering career, become a teacher, and I'm struggling. Like I'm like the first year I had a lot of savings still left from engineering. So that first year I had a buffer in between this 66% decrease in salary from my engineering career to my teaching career. And so the buffer was unbuffing. Like I don't even know the right language for it. Like there was there was no overdrafting to draft from, right? It was like the math wasn't working. Like, wait, what's happening this year? Why is things so chaotic? Oh, the saving got ate up. And I'm running this nonprofit where I'm running a program where I'm buying students lunch every week, and we don't have no budgets. We don't have no donors. It's me.
Sure.
My checking account is the donor of all of it. And I'm like, what's going on? And I started realizing I'm in trouble. Like I made this commitment to these young men, but also I got to survive. I got to live. And so I found myself just as worrying, trying to keep it all together, spread so thin. And I think it was my second year of teaching. I don't know if it was second year. My first year teaching, I did the master. So it was the second year of teaching. I got a job at Chili's down the street.
Mm.
A brand new Chili's opened up. I wanted to bartend. I know you can make good money bartending. I was like, okay. And I'm like, I'm leaving work, grading up the papers, getting kids to their homework stuff, going to my job, working until 11 p.m., getting them the next morning, making copies. Like it was like, and I'll never forget the time that my vice principal came in to have Friday drinks with her friends, and they assigned me this table over here, and I'm like, no, I can't do that table. Can't do that table. I need somebody to take this table for me. I don't know if you ever see people waiters in a place trying to get people to switch tables. I'm like, can't take the table. And they're like, what's wrong with that table? I'm like, nothing's wrong with them. I know them, but I can't. And nobody wanted to take my table. So it was like, oh boy. So I walk over, trying not to feel like embarrassed, and say, hey, how y'all doing? Welcome. They're like, oh, what you doing here? And then they see I got a little, the little pocket thing on me, and I got a pen and a pad. They're like, oh, you're working here? I'm like, yeah, I'm here, trying to make some travel money. I'm trying to make survival money, you know what I mean?
Right.
But it was embarrassing. So that's that moment of like flashback to teaching, like, oh yeah, that was a season. There was a season where I didn't know how I was gonna make it to the next season,
And it's not right that particularly the money challenges like that, like other countries, they really value us and they pay you, 100 grand, whatever it is. And you're not alone. I mean, just my last year teaching, there was young black man, first year teaching, and he's going everything, but he's kind of like overwhelmed, like what's going on, and he's just tired all the time. And he's like, I learned he's a full-time police officer. He was working, he has four kids. So he was teaching full-time during the day and then going to be a police officer overnight. Right? It's like, man, I'm like, I hope you're like sleeping in the car or something. But it's just, can you imagine? That's like two of the hardest jobs that there are like in this country. And you're doing them both like in a 24-hour span. And it's like, that's just not sustainable,
It's not. You might, and I wonder for education, and maybe this is where we can begin thinking about like this bigger conversation of like, what are we looking forward to, expecting, kind of like trying to do in education, because there's a narrative about what's going to happen in education. There's a narrative that I'm kind of concerned about. There's a narrative about dismantling the Department of Education. There's a narrative about like giving all these states and these people who are hopefully healthy stewards of community and care and history. Like you're a history teacher. So many people don't want to steward history well. They would rather just pretend like it didn't happen. That the narrative around it is theirs to design for their own liking. That they don't want to hear anything discomforting or that hits up its any dissonance in their own soul. And I think I'm really concerned about that. But
100% Project 2025, and it's like, yeah, just the ways in which they are attacking so publicly and so intentionally the most vulnerable in our communities, right? And I think it's a real moment of, and I feel what's challenging is like so many of us, it's like we go to the well again, and you go to the well, we're canvassing, we're trying, some of us, trying to get Kamala Harris elected, didn't work. And then the next day, literally the next morning, I'm getting texts, I'm getting emails like plug in, like, guns, like whatever the issue. And so I just think that there's like a real plethora of important social justice issues, from housing to to education, to LGBTQ, to racial justice, like you name, Black Lives Matter, all these different things, um, and people are exhausted and vulnerable, and it's how do we come together to fight and preserve, not only just preserve what we have, because that's what's challenging, is like we're fighting for something that doesn't work and isn't enough as is. Right. And I think that's what's really challenging. And I've even some of the stuff, the attacks on DEI and everything, it's like, it's really important to, I'm thinking of the bell hooks, like, I think it's called Education is the Practice of Freedom. Right. And it's just like this kind of like liberation mindset, James Baldwin, folks like that, who are, like talk about like being conscious of the systems, like right at that moment, education's purpose to make you conscious, and right as they make you conscious, you're critical of the system that you're in. And so I think like, we need each other, and mutual aid, and compassionate care, and certainly to stand up for the programs that serve the most vulnerable in schools. And I hope it blows up in their face. Like that's the thing. We see some of the cabinet pit, we see some of the the evil out in the open.
Yep.
And I'd like to believe that like there are going to be people who voted that way who are going to see it and at this time in office, and they're going to defect, and they'll be like, actually, like, no,
Yeah.
But can we come together across division is a big one. Like with the misinformation and social media,
that's the big question right now.
Yeah.
And I think that when I think about all the things that we're about to do right next, right? All the pieces of the puzzle that we're gonna have to put together, that we're gonna have to like watch and see what happens. This idea that somehow it makes it better for the future to have less organized idea of education, especially when most of our young people are learning through their devices. They're learning through their phones, right? And so when we begin to say, well, hey, go learn on your own. Hey, don't, like whatever the rules of the land become, of each state that decides. I guess in your school, like maybe, is there something that you saw working? Is there something that you saw that you are hopeful for in education, that something that you were trying in your classroom? Teaching history is really powerful. And is there something, like, I've always loved history. Like I've had some really amazing history teachers growing up, but is there something that you see working, whether it's on the learning side or the student support side, right? Because that's a big part of learning, is an environment where learning can happen, So was there parts of it that felt like the word I'm looking for? Is it parts of what you saw in your school, or some things you saw you like hopeful? There's the word, hopeful. What is that word? I don't know. I haven't thought about hopeful.
Exactly. I'll just say, my most recent experience was at a big public school in PG County, and like it was just challenging and hard, and like the truancy and the I mean, there are kids in a role that I never saw, and so I think something happened to this place in the pandemic years that made it. And I started the school year late too, like last fall, so that didn't
Yeah.
help me. But I'll say that like the young people were curious. Like, yeah, like we got into some conversations and some history of Israel and Palestine and
Mm.
1948 and Nakba and like all that. And like right when all that's, the post, October 7th and the, genocide, not everybody feels this genocide, all the different things. And, there were, just by bringing some of that conversation in the classroom, there was some risk, right? Because there was like 4 teachers in Montgomery County that got suspended around it. And it was a time of
Mm.
encampments and all this sort of stuff. So I think like that was, because they're seeing it on their social media, but they don't understand, right?
Yeah.
And so that was. I also did the book on tyranny, which I highly recommend. Timothy Snyder. It's a graphic novel, and it's all about fascism, stopping fascism, and it's 20 lessons from the 20th century. And what's interesting
Mm.
is one of them's called the first lesson is "Do not obey in advance." And he's talking about Nazi Germany. He's talking about Hitler, but he's also talking about making parallels to Trumpism. And so I just had this moment this summer when Washington Post and LA Times, they refused to endorse Kamala Harris. And I was like, oh my gosh, they're obeying in advance. Like I hope they're
Mm.
like seeing this, that people, because
Mm.
of the wealth and the power and the fear of Trumpism, they're enabling it by not standing up to him in it, right?
Mm.
So that's some powerful things. But in terms of school wide, no, I think like unfortunately, some of the better stuff that I've seen from that is in an independent school. Like I taught at Edmund Burke a few years back, actually in the pandemic, 2019, 2020, and they had a class called Health, Values, and Ethics,
Yeah.
HVE, and that was really good. And that was an opportunity to bring in a lot of social justice content, doing like sexual education, a lot of stuff that I wish that I'd had in my old
Yeah.
boys' school growing up. And they had great art. They had like, what do they call it? Like American Idol, but for Burke. They had great like music and art and theater and field trips and just and that comes with unfortunately the tuition and the endowment. And, it's private school, right? And
Yeah.
so I wish that I had a public school education experience recently
Yeah.
that's been really like vibrant and like positive, and I don't. What about you?
Yeah. It's been challenging. We now work on the outside going in. So when I work with educators, when I'm trying to work with school leaders and saying, hey, maybe we start with the professional development. And I think in so many ways, I'm as critical as I am about education is because I really care about it. And I think that what I often see is this kind of like, let's wait to clean up the pieces after things have broken, as opposed to let us be proactive. And I think that, and I know that principals and administrators are measured on certain metrics. And I don't think that the well-being of your students is measured,
Right.
because you can't really give it a number. You can't put it in a little box and say, "Oh, look at this. I color coded this because I'm in that range of blah blah blah." How do you measure how well your students are doing? Do you look at your suspension data? Do you look at the number of tardies and absences? And yeah, we want to improve those things, but if you don't get the kids to come to the building,
Right.
how are you going to improve? How are you going to keep them there if they're
Right.
not showing up? If they know the building is not safe, then what do you do to make it a safer place if you're not even getting them to come there? And I think,
Yeah.
um, sadly, I, and here's what I do see. I do see some schools who are like, we are trying to be proactive. Not only do we have an advisory program, but we have a system where students can get, like, I like most schools. I think if you think about most cities, or they're definitely in the Bay Area, like there's a wellness center. I think I don't know if it's a law or if it's a mandate that every school, high school, middle school, is supposed to have a wellness center on campus. And it
Mhm.
just means a place where students can go to navigate. Now the question is, how do they get access to those buildings? Is
Right.
the building well labeled? Do kids know that it exists? I mean, because one thing to have a wellness center and another have a place that no one knows exists, right?
Right.
And I think that's so critical. That is, it's seen as a place where, and as when I had opportunity to help be creating of a wellness center, of a student support success center, students wanted to be there more than wanted to be in class.
Yeah.
Well, why did they do that? Well, did they not want to be in class? Yes, and if you create a space where kids feel seen,
Yeah.
they want to spend more time there. And it's like, well, look, there's nothing special in this room except there's a couch over there. But where where do we help students feel seen in their classrooms so they don't have to come to this place because it's the only place they feel like somebody even sees them, right? And
Yeah.
I think, hey, I think part of our work is helping schools make each classroom feel like a place where students belong. Like you talked about those
Right.
men getting together, a place of belonging. Like, yeah, I may not like this class. I knew in my middle school, Miss BP, I absolutely hated English,
Mm.
but I loved Miss BP. So I wouldn't miss her. So I
Yeah.
wouldn't miss her class because I would do anything she asked me to do. Although I hated her class. I hated her class, right?
That's a
Oh my god,
funny. Yeah, that's a
yeah,
funny
it was
connection.
but I showed up every time. Give me all the red marks you want, but I'm showing up to the class because she didn't treat me bad because I hated her class. She didn't treat me like I was nobody. And I think what if kids felt that more,
Yeah. An interesting one positive thing I will just say from this last year in public school is like, with the belonging stuff is all the LGBTQ plus stuff, like where the young people are with gender and with like sexual orientation is like way ahead of certainly when I was in high school or even 10 years ago. So, they would have a day, pride, things like that. And kids had little flags or stickers or they're just like the rainbows and all that. And like, that's good to see, and you still had some, I hear occasionally like male students like say something about certain people or like the bathrooms, right? You have the kids who are like trans and kind of like there's some transphobia, some homophobia. Like I absolutely obviously still exists. But for the most part, like it gives me hope. Um the young and I actually think there's potential for great organizing around that, given the far right and what they're trying to do. Like similarly with women and reproductive rights and abortion, it's like you have these big issues that are important, like human rights, that the masses can rally around. Now, here's the thing: there's all kinds of anti-blackness, right? Do people rally? Everybody rally? They don't. Everybody doesn't rally around that in
Yeah.
the same way that they do for some of these other issues, which I think is a big deal, a big problem. Um, and and I'll just say that all this stuff with undocumented, like they're talking about the deportation and all, and so it's going to be really interesting. Like particularly like DC area, this is impacts a lot of families of all races. So be just the the racism and the xenophobia and the othering, that
Yeah.
this sentiment and these actions bring about. It's like I expect and hope folks will like take to the streets. Yeah, so I mean, it could be like a really vibrant time for student organizing this winter, and then the next spring because it just we need you. I'll be there. I'll be there with you. My knees and my back may hurt, but like I'll come out.
But there's gonna be a lot of needs in this next year. And I'm hoping as a person who wants to be optimistic, I want to believe that it's gonna take some people coming together. It's gonna take us coming across barriers and identities and racial lines to say, can we come to a place of understanding and learning and coming to a place of belonging and togetherness? Otherwise, what people are already starting to feel and see and hear in the rhetoric and in the narrative is that you should be concerned. You
Mm,
should be concerned. And now we simply can't go back and change what now the new concerns are about to arrive that have shown up. We're going to have to get those people together who actually care to say, okay, but I think sometimes you almost feel like people want to see how it can't be that bad. It can't. There's no way that they're going to make it. Like it's almost like you almost have people are in disbelief that there is a reality that they think won't hurt them, right? And I think, yeah. So here's the next chapter. Here's the next
yeah.
chapter.
And can I just say one other thing is like I
Yeah.
think there are too many folks who are like too pure in their politics, right? And I think we need a bigger umbrella. If this election teaches us anything, we need to embrace and build community with people that aren't going to be the same with us on every single issue, you know? And I think there was a lot of, I get frustrated a little bit with the left where it's like, oh, Kamala Harris, and it's the same, right? The two parties are the same. And I think that there's a reason to be really outraged and upset, particularly around Israel, Gaza, and that policy. And stuff at the border, immigration. There are a lot of areas where the Democrats are in with the elite, have their head in the sand, and they deserve criticism. And like, there's some differences, right? There's some evil, unleashed that, is coming. And I think that, so I just think that our language and our analysis needs to be, we need more consciousness, we need more accuracy, we need more truth, and we need more acceptance and affirmation and valuing of each other, even when we don't fully agree,
Oh boy. Well, listen, folks, Jason, and everyone listening, these conversations are just getting started. And they're not only just getting started in a new way, but we're going to have to continue having them. So if you know anybody that should hear this conversation, share this episode with them. Jason, will you tell us, first of all, folks, how they can find you? Tell the name of your book so we'll put that all in the show notes. But I want to make sure that people know how to find you in the ways that you feel is the best.
All right. Thanks so much. It's changethenarrative.me. My website, also collaborative with Zeb Kinder and Dana Rose, called Educators for Racial Justice. So www.that.org. The name of the upcoming book is a graphic memoir I've written. It's called Unicorns, a graphic memoir for young white men. So that's really exciting. And someone's illustrating the first couple pages of that now so that I can kind of use that in the pitches to the publishers and such. So hopefully there's a market for that and I can get that out in the world. And once again, so grateful to be in community and on the show with you, and let me know what you need. That's a question in these times where it's like, we have to hold space for each other, and these times are hard. So, if you need anything to further this work, like, please let me know. Like, don't hesitate to ask.
Well, we're going to be bringing the Million Mask movement to your community, so you may be able to help me connect with some schools out there,
sure.
Because we know that as soon as they see it, they get it. But it's really getting past that cold intro. So thank you, Jason. Thank you for being here on the show again. Thank you for your dedication to a world that we can believe in, that we can feel all seen, and we can all feel like we belong. And that's so critical. Folks, Jason and I shared our masks here publicly. You can share yours privately, anonymously at millionmask.org, millionmask.org. We'll put notes and connections to reach out to Jason in the show notes. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being in this new season of unmasking with male educators. And we appreciate you so much. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you. Thank you so much.